International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity. International Women's Day has occurred for well over a century, with the first IWD gathering in 1911 supported by over a million people in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland. Prior to this, the Socialist Party of America, the United Kingdom suffragists and suffragettes, and further groups campaigned for women's equality. So, in celebration of International Women's Day, I'm going to go down a timeline of just some of the advancements women have made since the 1880s in America, for the most part. Just America. Okay. So, in 1881, the American Association of University Women was founded. In 1915, the American Medical Women's Association was founded. In 1916, America's first birth control clinic was opened, which would later take on the name Planned Parenthood. In 1917, Jeannette Rankin was the first woman to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives representing Montana. In 1920, the 19th Amendment is ratified at the federal level, giving women the right to vote in all 50 states. In 1921, the Promotion of the Welfare and Hygiene of Maternity and Infancy Act, more commonly known as the Shepard-Towner Act, was passed at the federal level, providing federal funding for maternity and child care. So then we have a few decade hiatus until 1960, when the Women's Armed Services Integration Act was enacted and allowed women to serve as permanent regular members of the armed forces in the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and the recently formed Air Force. In 1963, the Equal Pay Act was passed, which aimed to abolish wage disparity based on sex. Also the same year, the Association of Reproductive Health Professionals was founded. A couple years later, in 1965, birth control was legalized for married couples, and the National Organization for Women was founded. Another couple years later, in 1967, an executive order signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson banned discrimination on the basis of sex in hiring and employment in both the United States federal workforce and on the part of government contractors. The following year, in 1968, Shirley Chisholm became the first Black woman to serve in Congress. The same year, the Fair Housing Act was enacted, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of sex. And still the same year, the Guttmacher Institute was founded. In 1969, the NARAL Pro-Choice America was established. In 1970, Title X was signed into law by Richard Nixon, expanding access to reproductive health care for women who were low income. In 1971, women were finally legally allowed to practice law. And the following year, Title IX was passed, which prohibits discrimination against girls and women in federally funded education, including in athletics programs. And still in 1972, birth control was legalized for everybody, not just married couples, and the following states ratified the Equal Rights Amendment: Alaska, California, Colorado, Delaware, Hawaii, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. In 1973, women had the right to receive a legal abortion in all 50 states, thanks to Roe v. Wade. And still the same year, the states Connecticut, Minnesota, New Mexico, Oregon, South Dakota, Vermont, Washington, and Wyoming ratified the Equal Rights Amendment. In 1974, Maine, Montana, and Ohio also ratified the Equal Rights Amendment, and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act made it unlawful for any creditor to discriminate against any applicant with respect to any aspect of a credit transaction on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, marital status, or age. In 1975, North Dakota ratified the Equal Rights Amendment, and in 1977, Indiana ratified the Equal Rights Amendment. In 1978, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act was signed into law to prohibit discrimination in the workplace on the basis of pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions. In 1979, the nation's General Assembly adopted the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. In 1984, the International Women's Health Coalition was established. In 1993, marital rape became criminalized in all 50 states. In the same year, the Family and Medical Leave Act, a United States federal law requiring covered employers to provide employees job-protected and unpaid leave for qualified medical and family. The Family Medical Leave Act was passed, which provided unpaid leave for family members, for qualified medical and family reasons, including personal or family illness, family military leave, pregnancy, adoption, or the foster care placement of a child. Sorry for that tongue twister I just said, which wasn't even really a tongue twister, it was just a lot of words. Okay, so the same year, the first woman Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was confirmed. And the following year, Congress enacts the FACE Act, which stands for the Federal Access to Clinic Entrances Act. And the same year, the Violence Against Women Act was passed, but has since expired. And in 1998, Equity in Prescription Insurance and Contraceptive Coverage Act was passed. In 1999, in Davis versus Monroe County Board of Education, the Supreme Court ruled that a school board can be held responsible under Title IX of Education Amendments of 1972 for student-on-student sexual harassment. In the same year, the Breast Cancer Prevention Institute was founded. And in the following year, mifepristone, or the abortion pill, was approved by the FDA. In 2006, the HPV vaccine was approved. In 2013, the FDA approved Plan B one-step emergency contraception without a prescription for women 15 years of age and older. And in the same year, the Transport for Female Genital Mutilation Act, was passed, which prohibits knowingly transporting a girl out of the United States for the purpose of undergoing FGM. And in 2016, the Survivors' Bill of Rights Act was signed into law at the federal level. Through the law, survivors of sexual assault are given the right to have a rape kit preserved for the length of the case's statute of limitations, to be notified of an evidence kit's destruction, and to be confirmed about the results of forensic exams. And in the same year, women were allowed to serve in combat roles in the military. In 2017, Nevada ratified the Equal Rights Amendment, and the following year, Illinois ratified the Equal Rights Amendment. And in 2018, the same year, the First Step Act became law to make feminine hygiene products available to prisoners for free in a quantity that is appropriate to the healthcare needs of each prisoner. It also severely limits the use of restraints of pregnant women. So there you go. That's just a short review of all the advancements women have made since the 1880s. And thank you for celebrating International Women's Day with me.